Here I am yakking away about my favorite double bar clamps from Shopsmith. As you can probably tell, I really love these clamps and I use them for just about everything. I didn't even realize how much I used them until I started making YouTube videos. I think they're really great for clamping up things like panels, window sashes, and cabinet doors. But even though I've been using these clamps heavily for years, I was absolutely shocked to see an old advertisement for these clamps in a 1980s Shopsmith magazine. Of course, the ad shows the clamps being used to clamp up panels, here on the left, but in the photo above, they show the clamps being used as regular bar clamps. I didn't know about this type of usage for these clamps, although I guess I should have since this technique is demonstrated in the manual. Figure 2 here at the bottom shows the clamps being used as the single bar clamps on some sort of keyhole desk or base cabinet. I'll try that technique out in this video and see how well it works. But what really blew me away when I was looking at this ad is this third picture here on the lower right. The double bar clamps are in an unusual arrangement. They have the thumb screw clamp and the end clamp paired up on each side. Normally, you only have one set of these per clamp. There also seems to be 3 layers of 3/4 inch material here. My best guess is that the top and bottom boards are some sort of platens and that the middle piece of lumber is supposed to represent some sort of veneer core. So this could be a veneer press. I've never seen this technique for creating a veneer press with these double bar clamps. I'm going to test it out in this video as well. Years ago, Shopsmith did produce a video for their Hands Online series showing how to use these double bar clamps as a veneer press. Instead of using 2 sets of end pieces, this technique uses 2 sets of spacers. First, a larger set of spacers to set up the clamps, and then a second smaller set of spacers to use as cawls to press the clamps together. In the video, Nick Engler explains how to use the bar clamps as veneer presses, and that video is still available today on YouTube.
Unfortunately, veneer presses are hard to come by these days, but you can make your own out of several double bar clamps like this.
I have to say, Nick Engler is one of my favorite woodworking content producers. He was involved in those original Shopsmith videos all those years ago, has written a series of several woodworking books, and today has his own woodworking channel called Workshop Companion. If you're not watching Workshop Companion and you're not aware of his series of books, I highly recommend you go check it out. It is just a treasure trove of master level knowledge. To demonstrate how I normally use these clamps and how I think they're best used, I've set up a mock-up of a panel glue up here in the double bar clamps. Setting up the clamps for this type of glue up can be a little bit fiddly, but once I get it set up, the results are always excellent. These double bar clamps do have a height limit. The end clamps only reach so far. In that case, one might be tempted to use these in a bar clamp configuration. I'll set up a simple frame to mock up how these clamps might be used and to see if they're effective at all. You're witnessing my very first attempt at using these double bar clamps as single bar clamps. You're going to see all the mistakes I make and all the difficulty I have trying to figure it out. Okay, I think I have something that might actually work here. Let me go ahead and tighten down these thumb screws and see what kind of results I get. Well, technically it held together, but with all the pressure on the bottom of the joint, it caused the top of the joint to spread open. And the way I had to insert these pieces, it would have been a total mess if I had to add any sort of glue to this joint. I'll go ahead and give it another shot, this time trying to clamp the workpieces from the side rather from the top or the bottom. Okay, well that first try didn't work. I think I need to add a little bit of pressure from both sides instead of pressure from one side then the other. Okay, this is going a little bit easier. I think having pressure on both sides helps. But as you can see, it just doesn't hold together. The pressure of the clamps actually force the whole thing apart. I think the reason that these clamps are actually forcing the joints apart has to do with the cambering of the caul. But as I demonstrate on the end of my bench, I think that arc is actually serving to force the clamp away from the workpiece, and eventually the end pops up. So I can't quite figure out the secret to using these as single bar clamps. If you know a way or technique of using these double bar clamps as single bar clamps, please leave a comment. So now let me move on to testing the veneer press setup. If I want 3 cauls for my veneer press, I actually have to have 6 set of clamps. So I strip the hardware off of all 6 sets of clamps, and I put the extra clamping cauls away and just hold back the 3 sets of clamping cauls and the 6 sets of hardware. I've also prepared a bottom platen, a center veneer core, and a top platen. Now that I've gathered all the parts for my veneer press, let me speed up the video and show you how this goes together. Again, you're witnessing my very first time setting up these double bar clamps as a veneer press. So you're seeing all the difficulties and mistakes I make as a result of that. Normally, these double bar clamps work by applying pressure against the sides of the workpiece, which then causes the metal end clamps to spread out, which then causes the clamping cauls to press inward on the workpiece, squeezing everything together. I think the idea of using 2 sets of end clamps per clamping caul is that the clamps themselves will press against each other rather than the sides of the workpiece. And as the clamps tighten against each other, they both pull down the clamping cauls. So you never apply any pressure to the sides of the workpiece with this arrangement. Unfortunately, I've selected the 24-inch clamping cauls for this veneer press, which are too short. So the end clamps are pressing against the sides of the workpiece anyway, kind of defeating the purpose of this design. So I'm going to switch to the 36-inch clamping cauls so that there's a little bit of space between the veneer core and the veneer platens and the end clamps. Okay, this is going much smoother this time. I've learned from my mistakes in the first setup. This method of putting the end clamps on is just way easier. So I can't quite call this a gimmick. It's a real deal here, but actually I think the technique that Nick Engler showed in the original Shopsmith video is superior. You wouldn't have to incur the additional expense of buying double the amount of hardware. That's it for this video. I want to thank you all for sticking with me to the end. If you feel I've earned it, please like this video. And if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Thanks.